Ezekiel Kralin has been writing a series about dog sitting, mostly, and writing faster than I can read the pieces 1 week at a time. So I'm going to read just one of them and let them pile up and tackle them as the time reveals itself to be available. Paris on a Two-Jacket Day is the title of this, by Ezekiel Kralin. When I told you in a text earlier today that I have a true tale that'll blow your mind, get ready for my next email. I never imagined it would encompass the rest of the day's adventures beyond what I first intended to share, which was my conversation with the new employee at Rosenberg's. For Deek, D-E-E-K, and Mutz had shown up right when I sat down to type it all out. Thus, I knew I'd be detained from sending him my missive by 3 or 4, maybe even 5 hours. Little did I dream, however, that further adventures would ensue during today's dog-sitting spell. I'm sure, good physician, you'll find the delay well worth the wait. In fact, it's a literary pearl of great price, if I say so myself. Many smiles are in store as you sit down and begin to scan your eyes across the screen and scroll even further down until the breathless end. Needless to say, I do hope Marshall McGee reads this piece on his next airing of Memo of the Weird. Here goes. Paris on a Two-Jacket Day. Another incredible day dog-sitting outside for Deek, though it was off to a good start well before he delivered the beloved hounds into my care. It has to do with my first real conversation with the new clerk at Rosenberg's, which is just around the corner, and where I've been faithfully purchasing my morning Java each and every day since the pandemic took off, seeing as coffeehouses had all become places to shun for fear of the Grim Reaper's breath wafting your way in a closed environment. He's been there less than 3 weeks, and several days back I learned that he's from Punjab. He certainly looks Indian, what with that swarthy, copper-tinted complexion and slick, jet-black hair, a somewhat handsome fellow, around 5'10", with a lithe but solid build. But from India? That surprised me, as I thought the shop was run by an Arab family, or at least by Arabs only. Maybe the owner hires from a pool of immigrants beyond the realm of the Middle East. Just a guess, I really have no idea, though the first time we met, I recognized his Indian accent right off the bat. Who wouldn't? It's the Quickie Mart owner's signature voice, so broadly popularized by his frequent appearance on The Simpsons. For you trivia fans, that character's name is Apu... Oh, Jesus, what a name. Nahasapima Petalon. Don't ask me to pronounce the surname, please. Try this link instead, and I don't have a link because this is only text here. The owner, Felix, hails from Palestine, though he recently went on vacation to Syria, of all places. I duck-duck-go'd it on the web, and it seems that tourism is flourishing there once more. Egads. And a very nice lady, Sada, who always wore lovely handcrafted scarves and worked there for almost 4 months but has since departed, claimed her homeland to be Egypt. At any rate, most of the employees who work or have worked there, whether for a short time or long, are or were quite friendly, with the rare exception of 2 who were only there briefly, possibly fired or shunted to some other position where they don't have to deal with customers. Like in a back room somewhere, producing fake passports and ID, or running Russian military rifles from Moscow's failed war with Afghanistan. Haha, just kidding. I'm a jackass American, with a touch of Islamophobia, who nonetheless voted for Barack Hussein Obama not once but twice. Conservapedia has some nasty things to say about him, but what do you expect from a snake-in-the-grass, right-wing, anti-American, traitorous, Trump-turd propaganda mill? Anyway, back to the new cashier from India. He greeted me with his usual, "Good morning, how are you today?" as I slipped my $5 Goodwill-purchased mirror shades onto my $2 Goodwill-purchased black baseball cap over the word Syracuse in thick embossed orange letters and stepped inside. "Oh, pretty good," I said with a smile. "How's Punjab doing these days?" "Punjab? What do you mean?" he queried with a contorted brow. "My family?" "Well, anything, actually," I replied. "Family, friends, recent events, the weather. I thought maybe you keep some sort of connection with your home base, even if it's just the Internet. Facebook, perhaps." He scoffed at that with a wave of the hand. "Oh, no. That's not home base for me anymore. I have little interest in that place since I left it. I don't read the Punjab Times, if that's what you mean." "Aha! I know exactly how you feel, I commiserated. I left my family years ago for California and never looked back. There's so many other concerns and interests to take up our new life. Why bother with the past, eh? So anyway, the conversation turned to Hinduism, per my direction, as I informed him that religion has had a major and benevolent impact on my perception of the world. Buddhism, too, I added, but we don't really need Buddhism, as everything's already there in Vedic scripture. Buddhism strikes me as an intellectual distillation of Hindu wisdom when it comes to how best to live our lives. That is, before other of his worshippers got their hands on his original ideas and grandly embellished upon them long after he passed away under that Bodhi tree. Though, of course, like Jesus, he probably never existed, but that's neither here nor there. Well, that got him going like a racehorse out of the gate, Watson. He began telling me some of the tales and characters, gods, goddesses out of the Mahabharata, and the wisdom flowing from those tales. I listened with a raptured ear, delighted to have found a kindred spirit. And then there's nothing. And then the next thing where there's text is the middle of a sentence. There's something missing there.
I have a book you should read, he exclaimed some minutes later after completing his impressive iteration of the Vedas' greatest hits in record time. I asked him what the title is, and it was something like Finding One's Soul, though I'm sure it wasn't quite that, though definitely was 3 words with soul at the end. Maybe discovering or realizing one's, or your, soul. Whatever. So who's the author? I queried. He then stated a quintessentially Hindu name, meaning one that is excruciatingly difficult to pronounce and thus impossible to remember for Western plebeians like this grossly ill-informed pilgrim. Oh. That name sounds familiar, I replied with glee. I think I've read it. Tell you what, let me give you my email and you can send me a list of books and references you'd recommend, and I will gladly check them all out, he agreed, and so I printed my email address with the pen and scrap of paper he lent me. But our conversation didn't end there, as I gave him a rough outline of my history as an LGBT activist, particularly for the homeless in our community, my present lawsuit that puts me in a position to speak out for the homeless, and my volume of work still in progress called Brindlekin Tales, and how it all ties in with my following the precepts of Hindu wisdom, along with that of Buddhism, Native American lore, Jewish Kabbalism, early Christianity, Celtic fairy tales, and several other cultures' worldviews. I also informed him of my enthusiasm for Carl Jung's teachings, especially about archetypes and how understanding them gave me the key to rising above my borderline schizophrenia and turning it into a creative force, what he called the heroic journey. And how Jung also studied Hinduism because it's so rich in archetypes, its myriad deities, demigods, and countless other fascinating denizens of their imponderable spiritual dimension. I wanted so badly to also tell him of my adoration for Ganesha the elephant god, aka mover of all obstacles, but alas, time is money and another customer had stepped inside. But before departing, I asked, "What is your name, by the way?" He called back from further down the counter where he was puttering with something. "Palace." I asked to be sure I got it right. "Did you say palace?" "No, Paris, like the city." He corrected me, then spelled it out, Paris. "You're kidding, Paris?" I exclaimed in astonishment. Now that's a great archetype right there. I did not explain further, for I sensed he knew exactly which archetype I meant, Paris of Greek mythology, who triggered the Trojan War by eloping with Helen, Queen of Sparta, and who fatally wounded Achilles with an arrow to that famous heel, and so forth. A romantic warrior archetype. I did drop by again a few minutes later with my business card I call my Brindlekin prayer card, which includes the fun blurb True Stories from the Castro, Eat Your Heart Out, Armistead, and the link to these tales, along with a black and white illustration of a puppy that resembles the brother-sister homeless dog duo I help watch over, and who have inspired well over 100 chapters so far, since my love for them took off on the evening of October 30th, 2020, the eve of Halloween, and the beginning of my very own journal of the plague year that it unexpectedly morphed into, as an alternative title. He kindly accepted my card after I explained a bit how it encompasses Vedic and other wisdom we just discussed, via the inspiration of 2 sweet little hounds. And there's the Bhakti Yoga I told you about, I said upon exiting Rosenberg's for the second time that morning. For those who don't know what that is, here's Wikipedia's definition. Bhakti Yoga is a spiritual path or spiritual practice within Hinduism focused on loving devotion towards any personal deity. Though from what I have learned by reading about it many years ago, this devotion can also be directed towards another person, another living creature, or even something inanimate. Depends on just what your object of worship means to you and no one else, how it strikes your heart. In other words, your personal deity. And in my case, it's 2 doggies. Both half dachshund, half terrier, and 110% pure love. So there I was, back hovel and sipping on Rosenberg's Amber Elixir, kicking back in front of my X230/Chromebook workstation, joyfully pondering over my excellent rapport with Paris, when who should come hollering at my window, but Deke. I hadn't even begun to break fast with my usual toasted whole wheat English muffin slathered with I can't believe it's not butter. No rest for the wicked, even less for the good. Or as Marshall likes to say on his show whenever someone calls in, what fresh hell is this? I stood up and walked over to the window and peered out, whereupon Deke gestured for me to come down with a tilt of the head. As I slipped on my polyurethane slide sandals, thin polyester aquamarine hoodie and black Syracuse cap, it occurred to me, oh fuck, he wants me to watch the pups again, after sticking them with me for almost 6 hours yesterday. Well, chin up, I love those mongrels, but can't he give me a break now and then? The hounds were ecstatic to see me, as always, pressing against my legs for their uncle's attention as I crouched down to caress their brindle coats while their master pawed through his shopping cart to collect several devices he wanted me to charge, along with a Bluetooth speaker even.
Larger and heftier than the one he carried these past several days, at least it had wheels. Oh, a new speaker already? I queried. I traded it for the other one, he replied. I don't think he's in the store with the coffee anymore. How did that happen? Who's he talking to? Is this Deke he's talking to? Oh, maybe I'll find out a little farther ahead. It looked much better built, and its impressive heft indicated a more powerful battery that would give him 7 to 10 hours of high-volume play instead of just 2 or 3. Of course, a serious speaker like this would need to be charged 7 hours or longer if you start from 0%, but be that as it may, I admitted to myself he got a really good deal for once. These small-time black market skunks out of the mission or stationed at the UN Plaza frequently rip him off. Well, they're almost always stolen goods and the customer is never right, so what's a girl to do? I lugged it upstairs along with 2 smartphones, one battered and with a few cracks on the screen, the other fairly new, and 2 small battery packs, one sherbet orange, the other mossy green. Smartphones in one pocket, batteries in the other, made me appear as if I had unusual fat deposits on the front of my hips. Upon returning with a wobbly, water-filled disposable plastic bowl purchased through Amazon, 50 32-ounce bowls for $24.99. Okay. For the canines, Deke swung a leg over his bike and said he won't be gone for long, which is what he told me all these previous times I've sat the dog, so it really means nothing. What is too long anyway? Chinese actor's name in a Shanghai porn flick. I figured I'd be stuck out here for an ungodly number of hours again, but that's okay. My doggy devotion is boundless, and it's another loverly day here in Baghdadi by the Bay, so I didn't argue with him. Accepting my fate for the Bhakti Yoga it is, told him the dogs will be fine, and wished him happy trails. As it turned out, I managed to fix my breakfast and later lunch indoors, as well as use the restroom and grab some cardboard sheets from the basement in record time so that I wouldn't be away from the hounds more than 3 minutes each run. This outdoor dog sitting is a new obligation that Deke flung upon my shoulders barely 2 weeks ago, so I'm still learning how to adapt. One way being to switch to simple meals prepared ahead of time, such as 3 days' worth of veggie stew that only needs to be warmed up in a microwave and topped with grated cheddar cheese or slices of mozzarella. I use cardboard for clean spots for myself and the pups to rest upon instead of a dirty sidewalk. It also provides them with a bit of cushion for those times their master is too inconsiderate to supply them with cushy blankets or old jackets, sweaters, and such that he can easily snatch up on his daily rummaging through street discards and carry in his cart. It is surprising how clean such items remain after residents toss them out. Some folks are so kind as to first wash dry and fold them into free boxes that you find at doorsteps here and there throughout the city. I don't find it practical to sit outside along a busy street with my Chromebook to get some work done. For one, it's too much of a distraction. For another, I'm way vulnerable to theft, not to mention that sunlight makes the screen difficult to view. To my surprise, though, my Xfinity service is robust enough that I can actually connect while camped out by the bus stop in front of my building, and it's a reasonably strong signal to boot. Of course, I was hoping to see Frigga again, as I had such nice vibes with her 2 days ago, our first meetup ever. Alas, that did not occur. Regardless, I was surprised that I never wound up getting bored, just sitting there with the pooches, no internet, nothing to read, no one to talk to, just watching the world go by with 2 sweet quadrupeds by my side seemed to fill my cup just fine. But some charming moments did ensue for all that. I guess I really needed those doing-nothing breaks from so many trials and writing up a storm every day, so I now consider my dog sitting on the streets a form of meditation and treat it accordingly. I'd assume the lotus pose if I could, but my legs tell me that's not going to happen. First charming moment. An old fellow way up there in his 80s and sporting a walker paused to look upon me and the pups, with Lucky asleep and cradled in my arms, and Flacco curled up and pressed upon my thigh, to declare, "Dogs sure can be a comfort, can they not?" "Yes, sir, they sure are," I kindly replied. "These are my 2 angels." His face then lit up with a smile, though he spoke not another word but pressed on forward. Second charming moment. Sometime later, Deke's ex, Scampy, passed by me after crossing Market Street. I waved at her and said hi, upon which she pointed behind me and said, "The water's spilled behind you," and kept walking on toward Castro Street. Sure enough, when I reached around, I felt the bowl had tilted over and water was pooling where I sat. Fortunately, most of it had slipped beneath the cardboard and thus only slightly dampened the butt side of my pants. Before Scampy got out of earshot, I called out, "Thanks." Scampy's around 43 years old, 5'2" in height, only has half her teeth left, all rotten. She's a lady of few words except when screaming at her nightmares while half asleep, but sometimes what she said is really funny, though I can't give you an example offhand, maybe in some future tale. Third charming moment. Almost an hour and a half later, a young man who appeared to be all of 19 and probably gay suddenly appeared by my side with a puffy black nylon jacket dangling from one hand. "Here, would you like this coat?" He spoke in a falsetto voice, almost operatic. "I really don't want it." "Wow, sure, thank you," I replied, and accepted this presumably birthday-gifted garb into my own hand. Soon as he left, I tried it on. Perfect fit, loose but comfy, and warm. Funny that only in the past few days did I realize all my clothes have gotten quite worn out, and I'll soon need to replace my entire wardrobe, as meager as it is. And I really can't afford to buy even the least expensive apparel on Amazon, thanks to so much of my income going to support Deke's furry companions. Nor can I take the time to shop at thrift stores because it's so important I remain in and around my residence for his sake, 24/7. I never know when he'll show up next. And should I be gone too long, he'll panic. I know because it has happened, and more than once. Though he said he won't, he'll be fine when I recently spoke to him about it. I don't believe him, though, and he is never one to abide by his schedule in any way, shape, or form. Say, for example, he brings the dogs over every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday for me to watch them for several hours. That will never work with his kind of bipolar personality. One reason he's homeless and unemployed. Living by the clock is just too constraining and nerve-wracking, which I understand perfectly. We're not all cut out of the same mold to be factory replicants. Same reason he can't deal with finding a social worker, which is vital for getting a roof over his head and other basic services. He'll suddenly have to live by a strict schedule, appointments up the wazoo, and essentially become a prisoner of other people's demands who watch his every move and take notes. Anyway, back to the jacket. Fourth and final charming moment. I'm thinking my need for fresh clothing has just begun to be answered by the Great Spirit, though whatever Bodhisattva guardians watch over me. Through whatever Bodhisattva guardians watch over me. And as if to affirm that, Yet another jacket came to me through Deke's hand upon his return. He had tossed it upon the shopping cart, while I went back hovel to retrieve all his electronics, now fully charged. By the way, it was only 3:30 p.m. when he came back, so no, he really wasn't gone too long. "Here, I'm giving you a holiday gift ahead of time," he said, with one hand resting upon the jacket, which I had yet to recognize as such because it lay front down and looked like a small blanket, since I'm never particularly curious about the contents of his cart, which are worthless most of the time. "So don't expect anything from me for the next holiday coming up, whichever one that is." "Oh, that's fine, Deke. I'm not into holidays myself, you know that," I replied. He didn't say anything more. Thus I grew restless and egged him on. "So what is it?" He then lifted off the cart what was obviously a military jacket of some sort. Long, thin but surprisingly hefty, that is, quality cloth with a dense weave that could keep a Siberian guard toasty warm even on New Year's Eve out there on the windswept tundra where the wolves howl in hunger for the next gulag prison breakout. "Wow, yes, I love it. Thanks," I exclaimed with an effusive glow. Yet he still held on to it. He had something important to say first. "I know you once had a good friend who was in the military, a Vietnam veteran, correct?" Dumbstruck to hear such thoughtful words rise from a mouth that had only recently insulted and demeaned me in so many horrid ways, I could do nothing more than nod my head in agreement and look into those sparkling Cajun eyes and smile. "So I thought you might enjoy wearing this jacket, though I could just walk a few blocks over and sell it for at least $20. He grinned back at me in such a way that only true camaraderie could inspire. With that, I raised up my arms and held out my hands to speak these words in return. "I'd rather you earn more money than just give me something so valuable, Deke, for it is a great jacket, and yes, I like it very much. Here, then, take it, it's yours." He draped it over my left arm and said, "It's kind of narrow in the shoulders, so it might not fit." Upon those words, I removed my bedraggled old hoodie and tried it on. Once my arm slid through the sleeves, I pulled the top down to my shoulders and gave it a few shakes so it would all fall into place. The khaki wool jacket fit like a glove, and a comfy glove it was. Deke stood back to check me out. "Looks good on you, Zeke," he observed with satisfaction. I thanked him several times over before leaving Deke and Mutz to their next adventure, where I noticed through my window upstairs they remained at the bus stop a while longer, Deke conversing with another vagrant who appeared shortly after I departed. They sat there on the cardboard I had laid down earlier and faced each other in amiable badinage as the dogs rested beside their master. I watched the shadows of growing twilight cloak this little group like a soft blanket as the sunset bid its adieu to a glorious day. Well done.